Earth, it's full of unique environments where life has taken unexpected and extraordinary paths. Today, we're going to explore isolated islands with strange life forms, big caves with scary creatures, and much more. But first, let's explore why life evolves differently. Life evolves differently in different places because of a combination of environmental pressures, geographic barriers, climate conditions, the availability of resources, and historical events. All of these factors interact over time to shape ecosystems in unique ways, which leads to distinct adaptations among species and diverse forms of life suited to specific habitats. This phenomenon, which is known as divergent evolution, is driven by natural selection, genetic drift, and mutation, which, when influenced by local conditions, produce specialized organisms that thrive in their particular environments. One of the most influential reasons life evolves differently in different locations is geographic isolation. When populations of a species become separated by physical barriers like mountains, rivers, or large expanses of water, they're no longer able to interbreed. This isolation restricts gene flow, meaning that genetic material is no longer exchanged between the separated groups. Over time, this allows each isolated population to evolve independently. Without the mixing of genes from other populations, isolated groups can develop distinct traits that suit their habitats and eventually diverge to the point where they may become entirely new species. This is a process called allopatric speciation and is a main cause of biodiversity, as isolated populations adapt to their environments in distinct ways. Environmental pressures and climate conditions are another major influence on evolution. Temperature, humidity, rainfall, soil composition, and other factors vary widely across the planet, and these differences in conditions lead to unique pressures on local species. In regions with extreme climates, whether cold, dry, hot, or wet, organisms will develop highly specialized adaptations. Animals in colder areas, for example, may evolve thicker fur or layers of fat to insulate against the cold, while in warmer environments they may adapt by developing efficient cooling mechanisms or reducing their need for water. This adaptation to specific resources is known as niche differentiation, and it allows a number of species to coexist by occupying slightly different roles within the same ecosystem. Historical events like climate shifts, volcanic eruptions, the movement of tectonic plates, these also have effects on human evolution by altering habitats and isolating or displacing species. When environments change quickly, species have to either adapt to the new conditions or face extinction. Major climatic shifts like glacial periods or prolonged droughts have historically led to mass migrations, forcing species into new habitats where they face different survival challenges. Volcanic eruptions and tectonic activity can also isolate population by creating barriers like mountain ranges or new islands, which can, again, drive rapid adaptation and speciation in the affected area. These processes all take place around the world, but there are some places where a combination of factors evolution in the first place. One of the main reasons life has evolved so differently here is their geographic isolation. The islands are about 620 miles or 1,000 kilometers from mainland South America, creating a barrier that's prevented many mainland species from reaching the islands. This isolation led to the phenomenon of adaptive radiation, where species diverge rapidly into a variety of forms and functions to occupy different ecological niches. Charles Darwin famously saw this process with the Galapagos finches, which evolved different beak shapes to exploit the variety of available food sources. Some finches develop short, strong beaks for cracking seeds, while others develop long, slender beaks for probing flowers or catching insects. The varying habitats across the Galapagos Islands have also added to that biodiversity. The islands are different in their elevation, climate, and vegetation, ranging from dry coastal zones to lush highlands. These distinct microclimates have algae underwater. This adaptation was likely driven by the limited availability of plant food on land, which forced the iguanas to find alternative food sources in the surrounding ocean. The Galapagos penguin, too, which is one of the smallest penguin species, has adapted to the equatorial climate by seeking shade and cooling itself in the water, unlike other penguins that live in colder environments. The Galapagos Islands' isolation and habitats have made them a cradle of evolution, where each species has had to adapt to a unique combination of environmental pressures, leading to the creation of entirely new forms and behaviors. This is why the islands are often referred to as a living museum of evolution, showing the ways in which life can adapt to the challenges of different environments. Let's move over to New Zealand now. Found in the southwest Pacific Ocean, New Zealand's animal and plant life has evolved in unique ways, adapting to the island's climate, landscape, and ecological pressures. Insects became the dominant animals, leading to unique evolutionary developments. Without any predatory mammals, many bird species adapted to fill ecological niches that are usually occupied by mammals elsewhere. Some birds, like the kiwi and the kakapo, have even lost the ability to fly, as they had no natural predators and didn't need flight for survival. The country's geography and varied climate have also played key roles in its ecological diversity. New Zealand's landscapes range from temperate rainforests and alpine regions to subtropical areas and grasslands, each of which supports unique species. The beech forests of the South Island, for example, are home to unusual mosses, fungi, and insects that have adapted to cooler climates. While the kauri forests of the North Island feature enormous ancient trees that can live for over 1,000 years. This wide range of ecosystems within a relatively small area has led to the evolution of species highly adapted to specific environments. New Zealand's biodiversity remains both a point of pride and a conservation priority. With over 80% of its plant life and a large percentage of its animal life classified as endemic, New Zealand's ecosystems are globally significant. All right, let's head over to the Amazon rainforest now. The Amazon rainforest is one of the world's most important ecosystems, no doubt. Covering an area of over 2.1 million square miles or 5.5 million square kilometers across South America, it is the largest tropical rainforest on Earth and home to around 10% of all known species. The diversity of life in the Amazon is incredible, with millions of species of plants, animals, fungi, and microorganisms, many of which are found nowhere else. Now, one of the main reasons that life has evolved so differently there is its age and stability as a tropical rainforest. This region has been mostly unaffected by ice ages and other major climate events for adaptations among its plants and animals. Most of the rainforest's nutrients are found within the living vegetation rather than in the soil itself. As a result, plants have evolved efficient mechanisms for nutrient recycling, such as symbiotic relationships with fungi that help them absorb nutrients more effectively. Some trees have even adapted to grow shallow root systems that quickly absorb nutrients from decomposing plant matter, ensuring they can sustain themselves in the competitive ecosystem. And the Amazon is also an important place because of the way species have developed relationships with one another. These interactions, known as coevolution, lead to an ever-evolving arms race between plants, herbivores, predators, and parasites. For example, certain plants have developed toxic compounds to fend off herbivores, while insects and animals have adapted to tolerate or even make use of those toxins. The result is a constantly changing ecosystem where species are continually adapting to each other's defenses and to spiny deserts. It's Madagascar's isolation that's the main reason for this. When it broke off from the ancient supercontinent Gondwana, the land that would become Madagascar drifted into its current position in the Indian Ocean and separated its ecosystems from those on the mainland. This prevented the influx of any new species from Africa or Asia and allowed the species that were already on the island, or those that arrived by rare events like storms or ocean currents, to evolve without competition from the mainland animals. This has led to the development of unique and highly specialized plants and animals, many of which are entirely different from their mainland relatives. One of the most famous groups of animals in Madagascar are the lemurs, which are primates that evolved solely on this island. Lemurs arrived in Madagascar millions of years ago, and without other primates or large predators, they evolved into a wide range of species. From the tiny mouse lemur to the large indri, each lemur species adapted to different habitats, boring trunks to survive in the dry climate. Madagascar's rainforests, on the other hand, support lush plants, including many orchid species that are found only on the island, and they've had to adapt to specific conditions too, such as soil type, rainfall pattern, and pollinators. Without large predators, many species develop behaviors and traits that might seem unusual elsewhere. For example, the fossa, which is a carnivorous mammal, is the top predator on the island with few natural competitors. Birds, reptiles, and insects also display unique adaptations, such as the leaf-tailed gecko, whose camouflage is so good that it blends into tree bark and allows it to avoid the few predators that are there. Let's talk about the Cape Floristic region. The Cape Floristic region in South Africa is known for its variety of plant species and its unique ecosystems. Covering an area of just 35,000 square miles, or about 90,000 square kilometers at the southern tip of Africa, this small region contains around 9,000 plant species. 70 pattern is relatively rare, happening in only a few other regions around the world, such as parts of California, Chile, and the Mediterranean basin. So in response to this seasonal pattern, many plant species in the CFR have evolved unique adaptations to survive the summer drought. For instance, many plants have developed thick, waxy leaves that help retain moisture, while others have extensive root systems that allow them to access deeper water. Certain plants, like proteas, have fire-resistant seeds or roots that allow them to regenerate after a fire, while others rely on fire to stimulate germination. The Cape Floristic region is dominated by a unique type of vegetation known as fynbos and a shrubland ecosystem that's full of hard-leaved plants like proteas, ericas, and restios. Fynbos is adapted to the region's nutrient-poor soils, which are often sandy or acidic, and these difficult soil conditions have forced plants to develop symbiotic relationships with soil microbes. The lack of large herbivores and pollinators are a desert now. The Sahara Desert, which covers an area of around 3.5 million square miles or 9 million square kilometers across North Africa, is the largest hot desert in the world and one of the most extreme environments on the planet. Despite the arid conditions, though, it's home to a surprising range of life forms that have uniquely adapted to survive in such harsh conditions. The Sahara's climate and geography are what have led to these evolutionary pathways. With temperatures that can rise above 120 degrees Fahrenheit or 50 degrees Celsius during the day and drop below freezing at night, and extremely low rainfall that varies across the region, life here faces significant pressures. Plants and animals have adapted by developing strategies to conserve water, regulate their body temperature, and endure long periods without food or water. Among the plants in the Sahara, water conservation is the most important thing. Many species, such as acacia trees and date palms, have deep or widespread root systems that tap into heat to help regulate its body temperature and long legs to keep it above the hot ground surface. The Saharan silver ant moves quickly on long legs and can withstand some of the highest temperatures recorded for any terrestrial animal. It uses its reflective silver body to deflect heat and give it more time out in the intense desert sun. Reptiles, particularly lizards and snakes, are also well suited to the Sahara's extreme conditions. Many are nocturnal, avoiding the heat of day by hunting at night when temperatures are cooler. The desert monitor lizard, for example, can regulate its activity to take advantage of the fluctuations in temperature. And most of the Sahara's reptiles and amphibians have evolved physiological adaptations to prevent water loss and survive extended periods without drinking. Even microbial life in the Sahara has evolved to withstand the extreme conditions and thrive in the sand dunes and salt flats. Certain bacteria have adapted to high salt concentrations and low moisture levels, which provide crucial dry climate compared to other Indonesian islands and its unique geographic conditions. But the Komodo dragon is, of course, the most famous and is a giant monitor lizard that can grow up to 10 feet or 3 meters long, and it weighs over 150 pounds or 70 kilograms. It is the apex predator on the island, and it's perfectly adapted to its environment, with powerful limbs, sharp claws, and a sense of smell that allows it to detect carrion from miles away. The evolution of the Komodo dragon as a giant lizard is a result of island gigantism, which is where certain species evolve larger body sizes in isolated island ecosystems. Without large mammalian predators or competitors, the Komodo dragon has adapted to fill a top predator role, preying on animals like deer, wild boar, and even water buffalo. The lack of competition and stable food supply allow it to grow to a size that's not seen in any other lizard species. Komodo Island is also enhanced by its marine ecosystems. Surrounding the island are involved in relative isolation, adapting specifically to the island's dry climate and unique environmental pressures. How about deep-sea hydrothermal vents? These hydrothermal vents are found on the ocean floor where tectonic plates diverge, and they have some of the most unique and extreme ecosystems on Earth. The vents are fissures in the seabed that release geothermally heated mineral-rich water, and they create an environment with temperatures that can range from near freezing to above boiling. At depths that are so far down that light doesn't reach them, these unusual conditions around hydrothermal vents have driven organisms to evolve in extraordinary ways, forming ecosystems unlike any other on the planet. In most ecosystems, energy flows from sunlight through plants and then up the food chain. As sunlight doesn't reach the deep sea environments though, vent organisms have adapted to use the chemical energy stored in compounds like hydrogen sulfide, which is released in the vent plumes. Specialized bacteria' mutually beneficial relationship allows the worms to thrive in an otherwise inhospitable environment. Hydrothermal vents are also home to unusual species like vent crabs, shrimp, and even certain fish species that have adapted to survive on the edges of these extreme systems. For example, some species of shrimp have specialized gill structures that allow them to scrape bacteria off the mineral-rich rocks, while vent crabs have developed unique behaviors and diets to make the most of these rare resources. The intense heat and high levels of toxic chemicals create a highly specialized environment where only organisms with extreme adaptations can survive. But these vent ecosystems are relatively short-lived, often being active for only just a few decades before geological shifts then switch them off. It is amazing to see that this is possible on Earth, but the study of these vents could have wider implications about life elsewhere. If life can exist in such an extreme environment here on Earth, then it's quite possible that it does on icy. And life has evolved so differently there is because of the region's extreme variation in altitude and climate zones. Each elevation offers distinct environmental pressures, such as temperature, oxygen availability, and moisture levels, which require unique adaptations for survival. For example, plants and animals in high-altitude zones have to cope with low oxygen levels, cold temperatures, and intense sunlight, which has led to the development of specific physical traits. At lower elevations, the Andes are covered in dense cloud forests, which thrive on heavy rainfall and mist. These forests are home to various bird species, orchids, and amphibians, many of which are found nowhere else. Amphibians, like tree frogs, have adapted to the moist climate and can only survive in those specific conditions. The Andes' middle elevations are home to unique plants too that thrive in grasslands and open areas. This region, known as the Andean highlands, support the species like Andean condor, the world's largest flying bird, and the vicuña, which is a relative of the llama that with the freezing temperatures and intense UV radiation. Animals like the Andean fox and mountain vizcacha, which is a type of small rodent, have adapted by evolving low-energy lifestyles and efficient thermoregulation to survive. Let's talk about Papua New Guinea. It's located in the southwestern Pacific. Papua New Guinea occupies the eastern half of the island of New Guinea and includes numerous surrounding islands. The tropical paradise is home to lush rainforests, towering mountains, and diverse systems that provide the perfect environment for the evolution of plants and animals. Its incredible variety of life is largely due to its geographic isolation and its varied landscape. New Guinea split off the Australian continent millions of years ago and created its own separate environment where the species could evolve independently. Around two-thirds of the country's plants and animals are endemic, including many birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians that have developed unique traits that are suited to these surroundings. It's the bird species that are particularly impressive though. The island is famous. Covered highlands encourage species specialization as plants and animals evolve to thrive here. Along with those famous birds, Papua New Guinea is home to a variety of unique mammals, including tree kangaroos, which have adapted to life in the rainforest canopy, and the echidna, which is a monotreme that lays eggs but feeds its young with milk. The island's reptiles and amphibians too are equally varied, with unique frogs, geckos, and snakes that have adapted to the dense, wet conditions of the rainforest. Let's head over to Patagonia, which is at the southern tip of South America, and it covers both Argentina and Chile. It's a region of great biodiversity. It's known for its landscapes of mountains, vast grasslands, and glaciers with windswept plains. Separated from other regions by natural borders, including the Andes Mountains to the west and deserts to the north, Patagonia has developed independently from ecosystems in Central and Northern South America. The region experiences a cold, temperate climate which relatives of the llama are well suited to Patagonia's harsh grasslands and have thick, insulating coats that protect them from the cold. The Andean condor, which is one of the world's largest flying birds, uses the region's strong winds and open landscapes to soar and search for carrion. The coastal areas, especially in southern Patagonia, are rich with marine life too, including penguins, sea lions, and orcas. The Magellanic penguin, for example, breeds on the Patagonian coasts, and it's adapted to the cold waters and rocky shores. Patagonia's waterways, fjords, and islands support a large number of marine species, which rely on the nutrient-rich waters that result from upwellings around the continent's southern tip. Let's head over to Socotra. Socotra is an archipelago located in the Arabian Sea off the coast of Yemen. It's known as the Galapagos of the Indian Ocean. There are clear similarities between these two island chains, and Socotra is home to an incredible variety of plant and animal species. This archipelago. As for the animals, the island lacks large mammals, but it's home to a variety of reptiles, birds, and insects that have evolved to fill ecological niches. Socotra is particularly rich in reptile diversity, with a large number of endemic lizards and geckos that have developed specialized behaviors. Bird life too is also varied, with several endemic species such as the Socotra starling and the Socotra sunbird, which have evolved specific adaptations to the island's varied habitats. Let's talk about the Coral Triangle. The Coral Triangle, which is in the western Pacific Ocean across parts of Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands, is one of the most biodiverse regions on the planet. It covers a region around 2.3 million square miles, or over 6 million square kilometers, and it's home to a huge variety of coral, fish, and marine life. In all, the Coral Triangle contains about 76% of the world's coral species, 37% of the world's reef fish species, and thousands of other marine organisms, in grounds for countless marine species. In this region, corals are extremely diverse, with over 600 species having been recorded, compared to about 60 in the Caribbean. This coral diversity has formed underwater cities, with each species of fish, invertebrate, and microorganism occupying a specific role and niche, from reef-building coral polyps to parrotfish that graze on algae. Let's head to Borneo. Borneo is the third largest island in the world, and it's shared by Indonesia, Malaysia, and Brunei. It's home to some of the oldest rainforests on Earth, dating back more than 130 million years. This long evolutionary history has allowed unique species to thrive in distinct ways, resulting in one of the richest ecosystems. The biodiversity of Borneo is huge, with around 15,000 plant species, 3,000 types of trees, 420 birds, and countless other species of mammals, amphibians, reptiles, and insects. Over 6,000 of Borneo's plant species hands. These primates have evolved long arms and grasping hands to find their way through the forest canopy, where they feed on a diet of fruit and leaves. Orangutans play a crucial role as seed dispersers, helping maintain the health of the forest. Elsewhere, the Bornean pygmy elephant, the smallest of the elephant species, has evolved to fit into the dense jungle environment, where it tramples the narrow pathways of the forest while feeding on grasses, bamboo, and fruits. And let's look at the Tepui Mountains. The Tepui Mountains. They're a series of flat-topped mountains located in the Guiana highlands of South America, mainly in Venezuela, with some in Guyana and Brazil. They are unique formations that rise up from the surrounding rainforest, often reaching heights of over 3,000 feet or 1,000 meters, and they're some of the oldest landforms on Earth, dating back as far as 1.5 billion years. Each tepui is essentially a biological island that's separated by deep valleys, rivers, and rainforests, which provide specialized strategies to thrive. Amphibians, reptiles, and small mammals are common on these summits, many of which are unique to these plateaus. The tepui tree frog and various types of lizards have evolved to live specifically in the rocky, misty landscape. Bird species too, including the rock-dwelling Guinean cock of the rock, also live in the mountains where they've adapted to the cool, damp climate. So let's wrap it all up. No matter where you go on the Earth, life has found a way not just to survive, but to thrive. It shows just how adaptable life is, and while it makes it far more likely that we'll find life elsewhere in the universe, it's most importantly a reminder of how varied and wondrous that species on our own planet are. There are still many more regions to explore, to understand their ecosystems more fully, so plenty of strange and bizarre creatures are just waiting to be discovered. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time. Thank you to our channel members.